Beauty. We talk about it as its ethereal, a platonic ideal, a universal truth. Timeless beauty, we say, usually about someone who has impeccable symmetrical features. But historically, it's not always been the truth. What ancient Greek worshipped as divine proportion, medieval Europe condemned as morally suspicious. What the Victorians praised as wholesome, we diagnose as the result of whalebone corsetry and chronic anemia. In other words, beauty is not the truth. It's a fashion trend with a god's complex. This is the story of beauty's many faces. We will walk from Greek marbles to Instagram filters, through Rome to Middle Ages, from Renaissance to Romantic angst, Impressionist rebellion, Modernist destruction, and contemporary crisis, where beauty is everywhere, yet somehow never enough. By the end, you might still not know exactly what beauty is, but you will know exactly who wanted it, why they wanted it, and what they did to it along the way. The Greeks didn't discover beauty, they simply put it on a spreadsheet. For them, beauty was mathematics, order, proportion, cosmos made visible. Polykleitos literally wrote about it, the Canon, in which he proposed that beauty follows strict ratios. Then he sculpted the Doryphoros as a demonstration, essentially turning a naked man into a mathematical proof. Nothing says I love geometry quite like chiseling a six-pack according to divine proportions. And the Parthenon? The whole facade curves bows very slightly to counter optical illusions, the architectural equivalent of contouring. Even the columns swell sadly in the middle, which is called entasis, so they don't look limp. The Greeks wanted their temples to look strong even from a distance. But then Rome came along and brought its own twist. When Greeks loved the ideal, Romans adored the mundane truth. Wrinkles, draws, receding hairline. It's as if the Greeks invented Photoshop and the Romans said, no thank you. I would like to look like a tired politician. Well, except Augustus. He's the only man in history to be both permanently 25 and permanently victorious. Rome used beauty as propaganda. The emperor's marble face was the ancient equivalent of a government-approved profile picture. So even here, in the mythical birthplace of beauty, they were competing ideals. Symmetry versus truth, perfection versus power, mathematics versus reality. And the word swung between them like a badly balanced Corinthian column. Beauty is suspicious. God prefers symbolism. After Rome fell, Christianity took over Europe and said, right, everyone, put your shirts back on. The body once sculpted as the pinnacle of creation became the gateway drug to sin. Beauty wasn't to be celebrated, it was to be resisted. Desire was a liability. Art's job was not to portray the world, but to morally correct it. Medieval icons are flat, elongated, almost weightless. They are not meant to be realistic. They are meant to be windows into heaven, not mirrors of earth. The more unnatural they looked like, the holier the message. Gothic stained glass wasn't beautiful in the classical sense. It was supposed to make you feel tiny, mortal, aware that you hadn't confessed enough. Notre Dame's spires weren't designed to be pretty. They were designed to point your thoughts upward, preferably towards repentance. Medieval beauty was more useful, didactic. It had less to do with cheekbones and more to do with salvation. The body makes the comeback in Renaissance. The Renaissance arrives, looks at medieval art and says, this is lovely, but any chance we can bring the muscle back? Humanism revives the Greek obsession with proportion. Leonardo draws the Vitruvian man, equal parts biology, geometry, and existential crisis. Michelangelo carves the David, a masterpiece of anatomical accuracy, civic pride, and frankly unnecessary level of confidence. Brunelleschi completes the Dome of Florence, still the largest brick dome in the world, by rediscovering ancient engineering techniques. Architecture becomes rational again, balanced, harmonious. And then there is Botticelli, pulling mythology back into fashion like it's the original vintage trend. Venus rises from a shell looking ethereal, elongated and utterly impractical for daily life. Renaissance beauty is a negotiation between science and sensuality, the divine and human, structure and softness. For a moment, a rare moment, Europe agrees on what beautiful looks like, but it won't last for long. Enter Baroque. The Counter-Reformation basically said people are leaving the church, time to impress them. So artists responded by turning every canvas into an emotional crisis. Caravaggio paints with shadows so deep you would think electricity hadn't been invented yet. Which of course it hadn't. His scenes look like paparazzi shots, taken right as the divine hits the room. Rubens gives us voluptuous nudes, cascading flesh, heroic torsos. Bernini sculpts marble so dynamic, he makes stone look softer than your favorite pillow. Theresa's face launched 1,000 theological debates about mystical experience versus emotional enthusiasm, and quite a few jokes about the expressiveness of her posture. Baroque's beauty isn't calm, it's not polite, it wants to move you, manipulate you, drag you, or the opposite of moderation, which means inevitably everyone will soon complain that it's too much. Rococo is what happens when aristocrats are left unsupervised. Flirtation, misty gardens, clouds painted like whipped cream, aristocrats reclining on furniture designed for decorative purposes rather than actual sitting. Boucher paints Madame de Pompadour, Louis XV's mistress, chief tastemaker, and unofficial CEO of French aesthetics. With so many ribbons, you would think she was sponsored by a haberdashery. The interiors are all curved, mirrors, gilding, pastels, the architectural equivalent of a powdered wig. Critics depicted it. They called it shallow, decadent, unserious. A decade later, the French Revolution agreed with guillotine. Rococo's beauty was doomed the moment it forgot that most people do not indeed live in silk-draped fantasies. After the chaos, discipline has its comeback. Neoclassicism revives the straight-backed moral seriousness of ancient Rome. Jacques-Louis David paints heroic virtue as if telling France, please behave. Beauty is moral again, stoic, reasonable. And then Romanticism arrives, takes one look at that and says, no thank you, I want to scream into the void instead. Romantics chase the sublime, beauty so vast, terrifying, or emotional that it overwhelms reason entirely. Géricault paints the Wrath of the Medusa, a shipwreck full of agony and political scandal. Turner paints forms that look like nature's been on fire. Beauty becomes emotional intensity, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. This century is the aesthetic equivalent of a messy breakup. Two complete opposites shouting at each other across the room. Impressionists decide realism is overrated. Monet paints light, not objects. Degas paints dancers mid-movement, blurry and imperfect. Pointillism turns color into chemistry. Then Picasso appears, takes a face, breaks it, rearranges it, and sells it for the price of a small country. Modernism is the aesthetic. Big beauty is no longer the goal. Meaning is. Duchamp put a urinal in a gallery and said, "It's art because I say so." Beauty dies, concept is king. Photography arrives, mass marketing ideals that normal humans cannot meet. The 20th century invents the supermodel, the movie star, the magazine face. Beauty becomes industrialized, commercial, reproducible. Art rebels, goes abstract, minimalism, brutalism, expressionism. Beauty, optional at best, suspicious at worst. Contemporary art doesn't care if it's beautiful. It cares if it means something, or disturbs something, or sells for suspiciously large amounts at Art Basel. But in everyday life, beauty is algorithmic, addictive, overwhelming. Instagram filters, perfect symmetry, AI-generated faces that don't exist but somehow look better than everyone you've ever met. We are surrounded by beauty and yet desensitized to it. Beauty used to be philosophy, then theology, then rebellion. Now it's a consumer product. Some say beauty is dead. Others say it's simply multiplied, subjective, democratized, chaotic. Perhaps beauty hasn't disappeared. It has merely stopped pretending to be just one thing. If you're not quite sure what we're talking about, make sure to check my playlist where we cover all major European art styles and talk about their characteristics. I'll see you there. The Greeks thought beauty was symmetry. Medieval Europe thought it was holiness. The Renaissance thought it was humanity. Baroque thought it was emotion. Rococo thought it was pleasure. Neoclassicism thought it was virtue. Romanticism thought it was pain. Modernism thought it was irrelevant. And today, beauty is everywhere you want, or whenever the algorithm wants it on our behalf. Beauty has never been eternal, but it has always been honest. It tells us who we are, what we value, what we fear, what we desire, even what we try to hide. The evolution of beauty is, in truth, the evolution of us. My name is Nina. I'm an artist, art historian, and a host of this channel. If you're interested in learning more about art, not just beauty, but perhaps history, politics, scandals, money, and all that jazz, make sure to subscribe